Question 1. Consider a scenario where a systems engineer is tasked with designing the cybersecurity architecture for a new IoT-enabled manufacturing line. The primary objective is to enhance production efficiency and reduce operational costs. The engineer is presented with several options for implementing security controls, each with varying levels of cost and complexity. Which approach to integrating security considerations into the design process best aligns with the principles of responsible systems engineering in a connected factory environment? Option A. Prioritize security measures that address only the most frequently reported cyber threats in the manufacturing sector, assuming that less common threats are unlikely to materialize. Option B. Implement a baseline set of security controls that are commonly used in similar industrial settings, focusing on the most cost-effective solutions to meet the primary objective of efficiency and cost reduction. Option C. Rely on the security recommendations provided by the vendors of the IoT devices, assuming their solutions are inherently secure and designed for industrial applications. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their impacts on operational continuity and data integrity. Then prioritize and implement mitigation strategies based on the assessed risk levels. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their impacts on operational continuity and data integrity. Then prioritize and implement mitigation strategies based on the assessed risk levels. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the systems engineer must balance the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of security vulnerabilities. The connected factory environment, by its nature, increases the attack surface, making robust risk assessment a critical component of system design and deployment. The challenge lies in accurately identifying, analyzing, and prioritizing potential threats and their impacts within the specific regulatory context of the 500-801 IoT Connected Factory for Systems Engineers exam, which implies a focus on industrial control systems and operational technology security. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the core principles of risk management as mandated by cybersecurity frameworks relevant to industrial environments. By systematically identifying assets, threats, vulnerabilities, and potential impacts, and then evaluating the likelihood and severity of these risks, the engineer can make informed decisions about mitigation strategies. This aligns with the proactive security posture required by regulations that emphasize a defense-in-depth strategy and the principle of least privilege, ensuring that security measures are proportionate to the identified risks. The process also facilitates compliance with any specific reporting or documentation requirements related to risk assessment that might be stipulated in industrial cybersecurity guidelines. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a thorough risk assessment is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for potential security breaches, which can lead to significant financial losses, operational downtime, reputational damage, and even safety hazards. Such an approach violates the ethical obligation to design secure systems and potentially contravenes regulatory requirements that mandate a certain level of security diligence, even if not explicitly detailed in the exam syllabus. The underlying principles of responsible engineering apply. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes only the most obvious or frequently reported threats, neglecting less common but potentially catastrophic ones, is also professionally flawed. It demonstrates a lack of comprehensive analysis and can leave the system vulnerable to novel or sophisticated attacks. It fails to meet the standard of due diligence expected in risk assessment, which requires considering a broad spectrum of potential threats, including those that may be low probability but high impact. This can lead to non-compliance with best practices that advocate for a holistic view of risk. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the security practices of similar, but not identical, organizations without conducting an independent, context-specific assessment is professionally unsound. Each connected factory environment has unique configurations, operational processes, and threat landscapes. Generic or borrowed assessments may overlook critical vulnerabilities specific to the system being engineered, leading to inadequate security controls and potential breaches. This approach lacks the rigor necessary for effective risk management and can result in a false sense of security. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, iterative risk assessment methodology. This begins with a clear definition of the system's scope and objectives. Next, asset identification and valuation are crucial. This is followed by threat modeling, vulnerability analysis, and the assessment of potential impacts. Based on these analyses, risks are prioritized, and appropriate mitigation strategies are developed, implemented, and continuously monitored. Documentation of the entire process is essential for accountability and future reference, ensuring that decisions are defensible and aligned with both operational goals and security imperatives. Question 2. The investigation demonstrates that the current security posture of the IoT-connected factory is insufficient to address emerging cyber threats. A new risk assessment methodology is being considered to improve the identification and mitigation of potential vulnerabilities within the interconnected industrial systems. Which of the following approaches best aligns with U.S. regulatory expectations and professional best practices for managing risks in an IoT-connected factory environment? Option A. Focus security investments primarily on addressing the most publicized and recent cyber attack vectors reported in industry news, assuming these represent the highest immediate risks to the factory's operations. Option B. Conduct a cost-benefit analysis of security upgrades, prioritizing only those measures that offer the most significant cost savings in the short term, irrespective of the actual risk reduction achieved. Option C. Implement a comprehensive risk assessment process that systematically identifies assets, analyzes threats and vulnerabilities, quantifies potential impacts, and prioritizes mitigation strategies based on the likelihood and severity of identified risks, aligning with NIST guidelines for ICS security. Option D. Rely exclusively on the security features and recommendations provided by the IoT device manufacturer, assuming their solutions are inherently sufficient for all potential threats. The correct answer is C. Implement a comprehensive risk assessment process that systematically identifies assets, analyzes threats and vulnerabilities, quantifies potential impacts, and prioritizes mitigation strategies based on the likelihood and severity of identified risks, aligning with NIST guidelines for ICS security. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a critical need for a robust risk assessment framework within an IoT-connected factory environment. The challenge lies in the dynamic nature of IoT systems, where interconnected devices, data flows, and operational dependencies create a complex attack surface. Identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their potential impact on production, safety, and data integrity requires a systematic and thorough approach. The chosen jurisdiction for this exam is the United States, and therefore, all regulatory and ethical considerations must align with U.S. frameworks, such as NIST guidelines and relevant cybersecurity legislation. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that prioritizes identifying and analyzing potential threats to the IoT infrastructure, evaluating the likelihood and impact of these threats materializing, and then developing appropriate mitigation strategies. This aligns with best practices in cybersecurity and industrial control systems, ICS, security, emphasizing a proactive stance. Specifically, it adheres to principles outlined in NIST SB 800-82, Guide to Industrial Control Systems Security, which provides guidance on risk management for ICS environments, including those incorporating IoT. This approach ensures that resources are allocated effectively to address the most significant risks, thereby protecting operational continuity, intellectual property, and worker safety. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the cost of implementing security measures without a thorough risk analysis is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of adherence to the principle of risk-based security, which dictates that security investments should be proportionate to the identified risks. Ethically, it can lead to underprotection of critical assets, potentially resulting in significant financial losses, reputational damage, or even safety incidents. From a regulatory standpoint, it may violate requirements for due diligence in cybersecurity, as mandated by various U.S. regulations that expect organizations to implement reasonable security measures based on a risk assessment. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes only the most visible or recent threats, neglecting less obvious but potentially catastrophic risks, is also professionally flawed. This reactive stance fails to provide a holistic view of the security posture. It can lead to vulnerabilities in less monitored areas of the IoT ecosystem being exploited, bypassing superficial security controls. This approach is ethically questionable as it may leave certain critical systems or data exposed. It also fails to meet regulatory expectations for a comprehensive risk management program, which requires consideration of all potential threat vectors. A third incorrect approach that relies on vendor-provided security solutions without independent verification or integration into a broader risk management strategy is also problematic. While vendor solutions are important, they are not a panacea. Over-reliance without understanding the specific risks and how these solutions address them can create a false sense of security. This can lead to gaps in protection and a failure to meet regulatory compliance, as organizations are expected to conduct their own due diligence and ensure that security measures are adequate for their specific operational context. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment methodology. This includes asset identification, threat modeling, vulnerability analysis, impact assessment, and risk treatment planning. Professionals should leverage established frameworks like NIST SB 800-82, consult with subject matter experts, and continuously monitor and update the risk assessment as the IoT environment evolves. The goal is to achieve a balance between security, operational efficiency, and cost-effectiveness, driven by a clear understanding of the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. Question 3. Upon reviewing the security posture of an IoT-connected factory, a systems engineer is tasked with evaluating the effectiveness of implemented security controls for data ingress from external sensors. The primary objective is to ensure that these controls are not only functioning as intended, but also meet the stringent requirements of the applicable regulatory framework for data integrity and confidentiality. Which of the following evaluation approaches best aligns with professional best practices and regulatory compliance for this scenario? Option A. Performing a high-level review of the security control documentation without any active testing or validation of their actual implementation and performance. Option B. Conducting a series of penetration tests and vulnerability assessments specifically targeting the data ingress points, followed by a detailed analysis of the results against predefined security benchmarks and regulatory mandates. Option C. Relying on informal feedback from the operational staff regarding any perceived issues with data flow and security, and assuming controls are effective if no immediate problems are reported. Option D. Utilizing generic security testing tools that are not specifically configured or tailored to the unique architecture and threat landscape of the IoT connected factory. The correct answer is B. Conducting a series of penetration tests and vulnerability assessments specifically targeting the data ingress points, followed by a detailed analysis of the results against predefined security benchmarks and regulatory mandates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the systems engineer must balance the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of data security and compliance within the specific regulatory framework governing IoT-connected factories. The challenge lies in identifying the most robust and compliant method for evaluating the effectiveness of security controls without compromising the integrity of the data or the operational flow. Careful judgment is required to select an evaluation approach that is both technically sound and adheres strictly to the defined regulatory requirements. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based evaluation that directly addresses the stated objectives and aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and risk management mandated by the relevant regulatory framework. This method ensures that the evaluation is not merely a superficial check, but a thorough assessment of control effectiveness, providing actionable insights for remediation and future enhancements. It demonstrates a commitment to maintaining a secure and compliant operational environment, which is a core responsibility of a systems engineer in this domain. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on anecdotal evidence or user feedback fails to meet regulatory requirements for objective verification of security control effectiveness. This can lead to a false sense of security and leave the factory vulnerable to cyber threats, potentially resulting in regulatory penalties and operational disruptions. Another incorrect approach that relies on outdated or generic testing methodologies may not adequately identify vulnerabilities specific to the IoT connected factory environment, thus failing to provide a true measure of security posture against current threats. This also constitutes a failure to adhere to best practices in risk assessment and mitigation. A third incorrect approach that bypasses formal documentation and reporting processes undermines accountability and the ability to demonstrate compliance to auditors or regulatory bodies. This lack of transparency and auditable trail is a significant ethical and regulatory failing. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the regulatory objectives and the specific risks faced by the IoT connected factory. This involves identifying the key performance indicators for security control effectiveness, selecting appropriate evaluation methodologies that are both comprehensive and compliant, and ensuring that the evaluation process is documented thoroughly. The framework should also include a feedback loop for continuous improvement, allowing for adjustments to security measures based on the evaluation findings. Question 4. Governance review demonstrates that the IoT connected factories data analytics team requires access to a wide range of operational data to identify efficiency improvements. However, this data includes proprietary manufacturing processes and potentially sensitive customer order details. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for data-driven insights with the imperative to protect intellectual property and comply with data protection regulations? Option A. Implement a comprehensive data anonymization and pseudonymization strategy for all data shared with the analytics team, coupled with strict role-based access controls and regular security audits of the analytics environment. Option B. Rely solely on network firewalls and intrusion detection systems to secure the operational data, assuming that internal access will be inherently safe. Option C. Restrict the analytics team's access to only aggregated, high-level performance metrics, preventing them from accessing any granular data related to specific processes or customer orders. Option D. Grant the analytics team full, unrestricted access to all collected operational data to ensure they have the necessary information for comprehensive analysis. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive data anonymization and pseudonymization strategy for all data shared with the analytics team, coupled with strict role-based access controls and regular security audits of the analytics environment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IoT-connected factories, balancing the drive for operational efficiency through data analytics with the imperative to protect sensitive intellectual property and customer data. The challenge lies in the inherent tension between making data accessible for innovation and maintaining robust security controls to prevent unauthorized access or exfiltration. Systems engineers must navigate this by understanding the specific regulatory landscape governing data protection and intellectual property within their operational jurisdiction. The complexity arises from the distributed nature of IoT data, the potential for vulnerabilities in connected systems, and the evolving threat landscape. Professional judgment is required to implement controls that are effective without unduly hindering legitimate business operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a multi-layered security strategy that aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, as well as robust access control mechanisms. This strategy should prioritize anonymization or pseudonymization of data where possible, especially for aggregated analytics. For data that requires direct analysis, strict role-based access controls, RBAC, and least privilege principles must be enforced. Regular security audits, vulnerability assessments, and penetration testing are crucial to identify and remediate weaknesses. Furthermore, adherence to relevant data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR if operating within the EU or equivalent national legislation, regarding data handling, consent, and breach notification is paramount. This approach ensures that data is used responsibly, protecting both intellectual property and sensitive information while enabling valuable insights. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to grant broad, unrestricted access to all collected data for the analytics team under the guise of fostering innovation. This directly violates data protection principles and significantly increases the risk of intellectual property theft or data breaches. It fails to implement necessary safeguards and demonstrates a disregard for regulatory requirements concerning data confidentiality and integrity. Another incorrect approach is to implement overly restrictive data access policies that prevent the analytics team from accessing any meaningful data, thereby stifling innovation and operational improvement. While security is important, an approach that is so prohibitive that it renders the data analytics function ineffective is not a best practice. This can lead to missed opportunities for process optimization and competitive disadvantage, and while not directly a regulatory violation, it represents a failure in professional responsibility to balance security with operational needs. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on perimeter security measures without considering internal data access controls and data lifecycle management. IoT environments are complex, and assuming that external defenses are sufficient ignores the potential for insider threats or compromised internal systems. This approach is insufficient to meet the comprehensive security and data governance requirements mandated by regulations and best practices. Professional reasoning. Professionally, systems engineers must adopt a risk-based approach to security and data governance in IoT-connected factories. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulatory framework applicable to the operational jurisdiction. This includes data protection laws, intellectual property regulations, and any industry-specific mandates. 2. Conducting a thorough risk assessment to identify potential threats to data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, as well as intellectual property. 3. Designing and implementing security controls that are proportionate to the identified risks. Prioritizing data minimization, anonymization, and robust access management. 4. Establishing clear data governance policies and procedures that define data ownership, access rights, and data retention periods. 5. Continuously monitoring, auditing, and updating security measures to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory changes. 6. Fostering a culture of security awareness and responsibility among all personnel involved with the connected factory systems. Question 5. Examination of the data shows that sensitive operational parameters and customer order information are being transmitted wirelessly between various IoT devices and the central control system within the connected factory. The current security posture relies primarily on physical access controls to the factory floor. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure data security and integrity while maintaining operational efficiency? Option A. Disable all wireless data transmission for sensitive parameters and customer order information to eliminate any potential for interception. Option B. Implement a comprehensive data security strategy including encryption of data at rest and in transit, granular access controls based on the principle of least privilege, and regular security vulnerability assessments. Option C. Focus exclusively on enhancing physical security measures, such as increased surveillance and access card restrictions, to prevent unauthorized personnel from accessing network equipment. Option D. Deploy a robust intrusion detection system at the factory perimeter and assume internal network traffic is secure. The correct answer is B. Implement a comprehensive data security strategy including encryption of data at rest and in transit, granular access controls based on the principle of least privilege, and regular security vulnerability assessments. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IoT-connected factories, balancing the need for real-time operational data with the imperative to protect sensitive intellectual property and customer data. The challenge lies in identifying the appropriate security controls and data handling practices that comply with relevant regulations without hindering essential manufacturing processes. The systems engineer must navigate the complexities of data flow, access control, and potential vulnerabilities within a dynamic industrial environment. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a layered security approach that includes data encryption at rest and in transit, robust access control mechanisms based on the principle of least privilege, and regular security audits is the best professional practice. This aligns with the general principles of data protection and cybersecurity expected in industrial settings. While the specific exam jurisdiction, 500-801 IoT Connected Factory for Systems Engineers exam, does not mandate a particular country's regulations, it implies adherence to industry best practices and a proactive stance on security. This approach ensures that data is protected throughout its life cycle, from collection to storage and transmission, minimizing the risk of unauthorized access or breaches. It also supports the operational needs by allowing authorized personnel and systems to access necessary data securely. Incorrect approach is analysis. Disabling all data logging to prevent potential breaches is an incorrect approach because it severely compromises the ability to monitor, diagnose, and optimize factory operations. This failure to maintain essential operational visibility can lead to undetected equipment failures, production inefficiencies, and an inability to respond to incidents, potentially violating implicit operational standards and best practices for system maintenance and performance. Implementing a single, perimeter-based firewall without considering internal network segmentation or data-specific security measures is also professionally unacceptable. This approach is insufficient for modern IoT environments, where threats can originate internally or bypass perimeter defenses. It fails to address the specific risks associated with sensitive data flowing between interconnected devices and systems within the factory, leaving critical data vulnerable to lateral movement by attackers. Relying solely on physical security measures to protect data without implementing digital security controls is another failure. While physical security is important, it does not safeguard data transmitted wirelessly or stored on network devices. This oversight leaves the connected factory susceptible to cyber threats that can compromise data integrity and confidentiality, irrespective of physical access. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to security. This involves identifying critical assets and data, assessing potential threats and vulnerabilities, and implementing controls proportionate to the identified risks. A thorough understanding of the data flow within the connected factory, the types of data being generated and processed, and the regulatory expectations, even if general best practices are implied by the exam scope, is crucial. Decision-making should prioritize a defense-in-depth strategy, combining multiple layers of security controls, and ensuring that security measures are integrated into the system design from the outset, rather than being an afterthought. Continuous monitoring and adaptation to evolving threats are also paramount. Question 6. Performance analysis shows that the connected factory's real-time operational data is critical for optimizing production throughput and identifying potential equipment failures. However, this data also contains proprietary manufacturing process parameters that are considered highly sensitive intellectual property. Systems engineer is tasked with ensuring that performance analysis can be conducted effectively while safeguarding this intellectual property from unauthorized access or disclosure. What is the most appropriate strategy for the systems engineer to implement? Option A. Implement a multi-layered security approach that includes data encryption for data in transit and at rest, granular role-based access controls to sensitive data, and network segmentation to isolate critical operational data from less secure segments. Option B. Encrypt all operational data with the highest possible encryption standards, making it inaccessible even to authorized personnel for routine performance analysis to ensure absolute data security. Option C. Provide unrestricted access to all operational data for the performance analysis team, assuming that internal personnel are trustworthy and that external threats are the only concern. Option D. Rely solely on a strong firewall at the network perimeter to protect all operational data, assuming that internal network traffic does not require specific security measures for sensitive intellectual property. The correct answer is A. Implement a multi-layered security approach that includes data encryption for data in transit and at rest, granular role-based access controls to sensitive data, and network segmentation to isolate critical operational data from less secure segments. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IoT connected factory environments, balancing the need for real-time operational data with the imperative to protect sensitive intellectual property and comply with data privacy regulations. The challenge lies in the inherent tension between transparency for performance monitoring and the security requirements for proprietary manufacturing processes. Systems engineers must navigate this by implementing robust security measures that do not unduly impede legitimate operational visibility. The correct approach emphasizes a layered security strategy that segregates sensitive data, employs encryption for data in transit and at rest, and implements granular access controls. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are foundational to many regulatory frameworks governing data protection and industrial security. by ensuring that only authorized personnel and systems can access specific data points, and by anonymizing or aggregating data where appropriate for performance analysis. This approach upholds both operational efficiency and regulatory compliance. It represents best professional practice by proactively addressing potential vulnerabilities and adhering to established security best practices and relevant industry standards for IoT deployments. An incorrect approach that prioritizes unrestricted data access for performance analysis without adequate security controls creates significant regulatory and ethical risks. This could lead to unauthorized disclosure of trade secrets, intellectual property theft, and violations of data privacy laws if personal data is inadvertently collected or exposed. Such an approach fails to implement necessary safeguards, demonstrating a disregard for the confidentiality and integrity of data, which are core tenets of responsible data handling and cybersecurity. Another incorrect approach that involves over-encrypting all data to the point of hindering legitimate operational analysis, even for authorized personnel, is also professionally unsound. Security is paramount. It should not render the system unusable or prevent essential monitoring and troubleshooting. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of the practical requirements of an operational factory and could lead to operational inefficiencies, delayed issue resolution, and ultimately, production downtime, which can have significant economic and safety implications. It fails to strike a balance between security and usability. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on perimeter security without addressing internal data segmentation and access controls is insufficient. Modern threat landscapes often involve insider threats or compromised internal systems. A robust security posture requires defense in depth, meaning that even if the perimeter is breached, internal systems and data remain protected. This approach neglects the principle of least privilege and fails to account for the dynamic nature of threats within a connected environment. The professional decision-making process for such situations involves a thorough risk assessment, understanding the specific data types and their sensitivity, identifying relevant regulatory requirements, e.g., data protection, industrial security standards, and designing a security architecture that balances operational needs with robust protection. This includes implementing encryption, access controls, network segmentation, and continuous monitoring, all while ensuring that performance analysis remains feasible for authorized purposes. Question 7. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new IoT sensor network for real-time production monitoring offers significant operational efficiencies and cost reductions, but the integration process requires bypassing some standard IT security protocols to meet tight deployment deadlines. What is the most professionally responsible approach to proceed? Option A. Delay the deployment until a comprehensive security audit and compliance review can be completed, ensuring all relevant U.S. cybersecurity regulations and best practices are met before full integration. Option B. Focus solely on the immediate cost savings and performance gains, deferring any detailed assessment of long-term data privacy and security implications to a future project. Option C. Implement the IoT solution with only basic, out-of-the-box security configurations, assuming vendor defaults are sufficient for the factory environment. Option D. Proceed with the integration, prioritizing the immediate efficiency gains and addressing security concerns in a later, less time-sensitive phase. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the integration, prioritizing the immediate efficiency gains and addressing security concerns in a later, less time-sensitive phase. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in IoT-connected factories, balancing the immediate benefits of a new technology with the potential long-term risks and regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in the inherent complexity of integrating new IoT devices into an existing operational technology, environment, which often has different security postures and life cycles than information technology, IT. Systems engineers must navigate the trade-offs between speed of deployment, cost, and robust security and compliance measures. The pressure to demonstrate ROI quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise long-term viability and regulatory adherence. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased, risk-based implementation that includes comprehensive security testing and validation against relevant industry standards and regulations. This aligns with the principles of secure by design and privacy by design, which are increasingly mandated or strongly recommended by regulatory bodies. For instance, in the U.S., frameworks like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and specific industry regulations, e.g., FDA for medical device manufacturing, EPA for environmental controls, emphasize a proactive approach to identifying and mitigating risks before full deployment. A phased approach allows for continuous monitoring, adaptation, and ensures that security and compliance are not afterthoughts but integral parts of the deployment lifecycle. This demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to responsible innovation, minimizing the likelihood of breaches, data loss, or regulatory penalties. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the solution without a thorough security audit and compliance review before full integration is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach ignores potential vulnerabilities that could be exploited, leading to data breaches, operational disruptions, and non-compliance with regulations such as the U.S. Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2014 or specific sector-based regulations. Prioritizes speed and cost over safety and security, which is professionally unacceptable and can result in severe legal and financial repercussions. Deploying the IoT solution with only basic, out-of-the-box security configurations, assuming vendor defaults are sufficient, is another critical failure. This overlooks the unique threat landscape of the specific factory environment and the potential for default credentials or known vulnerabilities to be exploited. Regulatory frameworks often require organizations to implement security measures commensurate with the risks, and relying solely on vendor defaults rarely meets this standard. It demonstrates a lack of proactive risk management and due diligence. Focusing solely on the immediate cost savings and performance gains without adequately assessing the long-term implications for data privacy and security is a short-sighted and potentially harmful approach. This can lead to noncompliance with data protection laws like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, if personal or sensitive data is collected or processed without proper safeguards. It also creates a future liability by embedding insecure practices into the operational infrastructure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with a comprehensive risk assessment. This involves identifying potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the impact of a security incident or compliance failure. Following the risk assessment, a robust security architecture should be designed, incorporating defense-in-depth strategies and adhering to relevant regulatory requirements. Implementation should be iterative, with continuous monitoring, testing, and validation at each stage. Regular security audits and compliance checks, along with ongoing training for personnel, are essential to maintain a secure and compliant IoT-connected factory environment. This proactive and systematic approach ensures that technological advancements are pursued responsibly and sustainably. Question 8. Analysis of an IoT-connected factory system engineers strategy for integrating a new predictive maintenance sensor network, considering the need for rapid deployment to meet production targets while adhering to the relevant regulatory framework for industrial control systems and data handling. The engineer is evaluating different implementation approaches. Option A. Implement the sensor network in phases, starting with a pilot deployment in a non-critical area. Conduct thorough security risk assessments and compliance audits for each phase before full rollout, ensuring all data handling protocols align with regulatory mandates. Option B. Deploy the sensor network immediately across all production lines to achieve the desired efficiency gains as quickly as possible, relying on the vendor's default security settings and assuming compliance. Option C. Implement the sensor network using only open-source software components, believing that community oversight inherently guarantees security and regulatory adherence without formal validation. Option D. Prioritize the technical functionality of the sensors and the speed of data acquisition, deferring comprehensive security reviews and compliance checks until after the system is fully operational and production targets are met. The correct answer is A. Implement the sensor network in phases, starting with a pilot deployment in a non-critical area. Conduct thorough security risk assessments and compliance audits for each phase before full rollout, ensuring all data handling protocols align with regulatory mandates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new IoT technologies and the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance within a connected factory environment. The systems engineer must balance the business need for innovation and efficiency gains with the regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data, ensure operational integrity, and prevent unauthorized access. The complexity arises from the interconnected nature of IoT devices, the potential for cascading failures, and the evolving threat landscape. Careful judgment is required to select an implementation strategy that is both effective and compliant. Correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased, risk-based implementation that integrates security and compliance from the outset. This aligns with the principles of security by design and privacy by design, which are increasingly mandated or strongly recommended by regulatory frameworks governing industrial control systems and data protection. By conducting thorough risk assessments, establishing clear security policies, and ensuring continuous monitoring, the engineer demonstrates adherence to due diligence requirements and proactive risk management. This approach minimizes the likelihood of security breaches, data loss, and regulatory noncompliance, thereby safeguarding the organization's assets and reputation. An incorrect approach that bypasses formal security reviews and compliance checks before deployment is professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes the spirit and letter of regulations that demand a proactive stance on cybersecurity and data privacy. Such an approach creates significant regulatory and ethical risks, including potential fines for noncompliance with data protection laws, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, or equivalent national legislation, liability for damages resulting from security incidents, and reputational harm. Demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for the potential impact on stakeholders. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on vendor-provided security features without independent validation is also professionally deficient. While vendors play a crucial role, their solutions may not fully address the specific operational context or the organization's unique risk profile. Over-reliance on third-party assurances without due diligence can lead to overlooked vulnerabilities and noncompliance with specific industry standards or internal policies. This can result in regulatory scrutiny and potential penalties for failing to implement adequate security measures tailored to the organization's environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, iterative approach. First, thoroughly understand the business objectives and the specific IoT technologies to be implemented. Second, identify all relevant regulatory requirements and industry best practices applicable to the jurisdiction and the specific industry. Third, conduct comprehensive risk assessments, considering both technical vulnerabilities and potential compliance gaps. Fourth, develop a phased implementation plan that incorporates security controls, data protection measures, and compliance checks at each stage. Fifth, establish robust monitoring and incident response mechanisms. Finally, maintain ongoing training and awareness for all personnel involved. This systematic process ensures that innovation is pursued responsibly and ethically, with a strong foundation of security and compliance. Question 9. The efficiency study reveals that a new IoT data aggregation platform can significantly reduce operational downtime by providing real-time insights into machine performance. However, the proposed platform's security architecture has not undergone a full independent audit, and its data handling practices are not explicitly aligned with the latest industry best practices for sensitive operational data. Project Manager is pushing for immediate implementation to capitalize on the projected cost savings. What is the most responsible course of action for the systems engineer? Option A. Advocate for a phased implementation of the new platform, prioritizing the integration of robust security measures and a comprehensive data governance framework before full deployment, and clearly communicate the potential risks of immediate implementation without these safeguards. Option B. Recommend the immediate implementation of the platform and suggest that the company's legal department review the data handling practices after deployment to ensure compliance. Option C. Inform the project manager that the platform cannot be implemented until a complete independent security audit is performed and all data handling practices are fully compliant, even if this significantly delays the project and forfeits immediate cost savings. Option D. Proceed with the immediate implementation of the new platform as requested by the project manager to achieve the projected cost savings, assuming that any security vulnerabilities can be addressed post-deployment. The correct answer is A. Advocate for a phased implementation of the new platform, prioritizing the integration of robust security measures and a comprehensive data governance framework before full deployment, and clearly communicate the potential risks of immediate implementation without these safeguards. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it pits the immediate financial benefits of a proposed system upgrade against potential long-term risks and ethical considerations related to data privacy and security. The systems engineer must navigate the pressure to implement a solution that appears to offer quick gains, while upholding their professional responsibility to ensure the integrity and security of the connected factory environment. The core of the challenge lies in balancing operational efficiency with the ethical imperative to protect sensitive data and comply with relevant regulations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and adherence to established security protocols and regulatory frameworks. By advocating for a phased implementation with robust security testing and clear data governance policies, the engineer demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation. This aligns with the principles of ethical engineering, which demand that technological advancements do not compromise safety, security, or privacy. Specifically, within the context of the 500-801 IoT Connected Factory for Systems Engineers exam, this approach would be guided by the principles of secure by design and privacy by design, ensuring that security and privacy are integral to the system from its inception, rather than an afterthought. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of future breaches and regulatory noncompliance. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate deployment without adequate security vetting would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach could lead to vulnerabilities that expose sensitive operational data, intellectual property, or even personal information, potentially violating data protection laws and industry-specific security standards. This would expose the company to severe financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of trust from stakeholders. Another incorrect approach, which involves downplaying the security concerns to meet project deadlines, demonstrates a disregard for professional ethics and a failure to uphold the duty of care expected of a systems engineer. This can lead to a compromised system that is susceptible to cyber attacks, impacting operational continuity and potentially causing physical harm if the connected factory controls critical infrastructure. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the project's objectives, followed by a rigorous assessment of potential risks, including security and privacy implications. This should involve consulting relevant regulatory guidelines and internal security policies. When faced with conflicting priorities, such as speed versus security, the engineer should clearly articulate the risks associated with the faster, less secure option to management, providing data-driven justifications for a more cautious approach. Escalation to higher management or a dedicated security team should be considered if immediate concerns are not adequately addressed. The ultimate decision should always be guided by the principles of professional responsibility, ethical conduct, and compliance with all applicable laws and standards. Question 10. Quality control measures reveal a potential intermittent malfunction in a critical sensor within an IoT-connected factory system, which could lead to inaccurate production data. The system logs contain vast amounts of sensor readings, operational parameters, and potentially identifiable information about factory operations and personnel. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to investigate and resolve this issue? Option A. Immediately access and analyze all logged sensor data and operational parameters to pinpoint the exact cause of the malfunction, prioritizing speed to prevent further production inaccuracies. Option B. Initiate a broad customer notification campaign to inform all users of the potential defect and instruct them to manually disable the affected sensors until a fix is available. Option C. Develop and deploy a system-wide firmware update that resets all sensor parameters to default values, assuming this will resolve the issue and prevent future occurrences. Option D. Conduct a targeted investigation focusing on isolating the specific sensor and its immediate data streams, employing anonymization or pseudonymization techniques for any personal or sensitive operational data accessed, and documenting all access and modifications. The correct answer is A. Immediately access and analyze all logged sensor data and operational parameters to pinpoint the exact cause of the malfunction, prioritizing speed to prevent further production inaccuracies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma in the context of IoT-connected factories, specifically concerning data privacy and security. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to address a potential product defect with the obligation to protect sensitive customer data collected by the IoT devices. The systems engineer is caught between a business imperative, product recall/update, and a legal/ethical imperative, data privacy. The interconnected nature of the factory systems means that accessing and manipulating data, even for a legitimate purpose, carries inherent risks of unauthorized access or unintended data exposure. The pressure to act quickly to mitigate potential harm from a faulty product can lead to shortcuts that compromise data security and privacy regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough, privacy-preserving investigation before any broad data access or system modification. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, fundamental to data protection regulations. By first attempting to isolate the issue without accessing personal data, the engineer adheres to the principle of least privilege and avoids unnecessary data processing. If data access becomes unavoidable, the process must involve anonymization or pseudonymization where possible, and strict adherence to access controls and audit trails. This approach upholds the trust placed in the company by its customers and avoids potential legal repercussions for data breaches or privacy violations. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible data stewardship, which is increasingly critical in the IoT landscape. Incorrect approaches analysis. Accessing and analyzing all collected data without first attempting to isolate the issue or anonymize the data is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It violates the principle of data minimization, as it involves processing more data than is strictly necessary to resolve the defect. This broad access also increases the risk of accidental data exposure or misuse, potentially leading to breaches of privacy laws. Implementing a system-wide update that overwrites or deletes data without a clear understanding of the specific data related to the defect, also problematic. This could lead to the loss of valuable operational data or customer information that is not directly related to the quality control issue, causing further business disruption and potential legal liabilities for data loss. Directly contacting customers to inform them of the potential defect and request they disable their devices without a clear plan for data handling or a secure method for them to provide information is also an insufficient approach. While transparency is important, this method bypasses established data protection protocols and could inadvertently expose customers to further risks if their communication is intercepted or if the company's response mechanisms are not secure. It fails to address the core technical and data privacy challenges proactively. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a risk-based approach that integrates technical solutions with robust data governance. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory obligations related to data privacy and security in the relevant jurisdiction. 2. Assessing the technical nature of the defect and identifying the minimum data required for diagnosis. 3. Exploring all options for isolating the issue without accessing personal data. 4. If data access is necessary, implementing strict anonymization or pseudonymization techniques and adhering to access control policies. 5. Documenting all steps taken, including data access and system modifications for audit purposes. 6. Consulting with legal and compliance teams to ensure all actions are compliant with regulations. 7. Prioritizing customer trust and data protection throughout the entire process. Question 11. Research into the ethical implications of deploying an IoT-enabled predictive maintenance system in a manufacturing facility. A systems engineer discovers that the system collects granular data on individual worker movements and task completion times. Management is eager to leverage this data for performance optimization and identifying inefficiencies, but the engineer is concerned about the potential for worker surveillance and privacy violations. What is the most ethically responsible course of action for the systems engineer? Option A. Advocate for a revised system design that collects only aggregated and anonymized data related to machine performance and operational metrics, and clearly communicate the privacy-preserving nature of this revised approach to employees and management. Option B. Implement the system as planned, ensuring robust cybersecurity measures are in place to protect the collected data, and inform employees about the general purpose of data collection for operational improvement. Option C. Proceed with collecting all available sensor data, as it provides the most comprehensive insights for predictive maintenance and performance optimization, and assume that employees understand their activities are being monitored in a factory setting. Option D. Escalate the issue to a higher authority within the company, requesting a formal ethical review and seeking guidance on data collection policies before proceeding with the deployment. Correct answer is B. Implement the system as planned, ensuring robust cybersecurity measures are in place to protect the collected data, and inform employees about the general purpose of data collection for operational improvement. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma in the context of IoT-connected factories, specifically concerning data privacy and security. The challenge lies in balancing the potential benefits of enhanced operational efficiency and predictive maintenance, derived from collecting granular sensor data, against the fundamental right to privacy of the factory workers whose activities are being monitored. The systems engineer is caught between the directive from management to maximize data collection for business intelligence and the ethical obligation to protect individuals' sensitive information. The interconnected nature of IoT systems means that data breaches can have far-reaching consequences, impacting not only the company but also its employees. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes transparency, consent, and data minimization, aligning with principles of responsible data stewardship and ethical AI deployment. This involves clearly communicating to employees what data is being collected, why it is being collected, and how it will be used. Obtaining explicit consent, where feasible and legally required, is paramount. Furthermore, implementing data minimization techniques, collecting only what is strictly necessary for the stated purpose, and anonymizing or aggregating data where possible are crucial steps to protect worker privacy. This approach upholds ethical standards and fosters trust within the organization, while also mitigating legal and reputational risks. Incorrect approach is analysis. Collecting all available sensor data without explicit employee consent or clear communication about its purpose is ethically problematic and potentially violates data protection regulations. This approach disregards the privacy rights of individuals and creates a surveillance environment, which can lead to decreased morale and trust. It also exposes the organization to significant legal liabilities if data is misused or breached. Implementing robust security measures but proceeding with extensive data collection without addressing the privacy implications for employees is an incomplete solution. While security is vital, it does not negate the ethical obligation to respect privacy. Collecting sensitive personal data without a clear, justifiable purpose and without employee awareness or consent is a breach of ethical conduct. Focusing solely on the technical feasibility of data collection and ignoring the ethical and privacy implications for workers is a failure of professional responsibility. The role of a systems engineer extends beyond technical implementation to encompass the broader impact of their work on individuals and society. This approach demonstrates a lack of foresight and a disregard for ethical principles, potentially leading to significant negative consequences. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a framework that integrates ethical considerations from the outset of system design and deployment. This involves conducting thorough impact assessments, engaging with stakeholders, including employees, and adhering to relevant data protection principles and regulations. When faced with conflicting priorities, professionals should advocate for solutions that uphold ethical standards and legal compliance, even if it requires additional effort or a revised approach. Transparency, accountability, and a commitment to minimizing harm should guide decision-making processes. Question 12. The control framework reveals a potential security vulnerability in a new IoT sensor network slated for immediate deployment in a critical manufacturing process. The vendor assures that the vulnerability is minor and will be addressed in a future firmware update, but has not provided a timeline for this update. The systems engineer is under pressure from management to deploy the system to meet production targets. What is the most responsible course of action for the systems engineer? Option A. Delay deployment of the IoT sensor network until the reported vulnerability is independently verified and remediated by the vendor or an alternative solution is implemented. Option B. Accept the vendor's offer to deploy the system now and receive the patch at a later date, assuming the risk of exploitation is low. Option C. Deploy the system, but instruct the operations team to implement additional manual monitoring procedures to compensate for the potential vulnerability. Option D. Proceed with the deployment as scheduled, relying on the vendor's assurance that the vulnerability is minor and will be patched in a future update. Correct answer is A. Delay deployment of the IoT sensor network until the reported vulnerability is independently verified and remediated by the vendor or an alternative solution is implemented. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma in systems engineering, specifically within the context of an IoT-connected factory. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate operational benefits of a new system with potential, albeit unconfirmed, long-term risks to data privacy and security. The systems engineer is privy to information that suggests a vulnerability, but the vendor's assurances and the pressure to deploy a revenue-generating system create a conflict of interest. The professional challenge is to act responsibly and ethically when faced with incomplete information and competing priorities, ensuring that the integrity and security of the factory's data are not compromised for short-term gains. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough, independent investigation of the reported vulnerability before proceeding with deployment. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of due diligence and responsible engineering. In the context of the 500-801 exam's implied regulatory framework, which would typically emphasize data protection, cybersecurity standards, and professional responsibility, delaying deployment until the vulnerability is addressed demonstrates a commitment to safeguarding sensitive operational and potentially customer data. This proactive stance prevents potential breaches, regulatory noncompliance, and reputational damage. It upholds the engineer's duty to ensure the safety, security, and reliability of the systems they design and implement. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding with deployment based solely on the vendor's assurances, without independent verification, represents a failure in due diligence. This approach risks significant regulatory and ethical violations. If a data breach occurs due to the unaddressed vulnerability, the company could face penalties under data protection laws e.g. GDPR if applicable, or similar national legislation focused on data security. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the potential harm to the organization and its stakeholders. Ignoring the reported vulnerability and proceeding with deployment because it is not a critical issue according to the vendor is also professionally unacceptable. The definition of critical can be subjective, and even minor vulnerabilities can be exploited as entry points for more significant attacks. This approach neglects the principle of defense in depth and the potential for cascading failures. It also shows a lack of foresight and a failure to adhere to best practices in cybersecurity, which would likely be mandated or strongly recommended by relevant industry standards and regulations. Accepting the vendor's offer of a future patch without assessing the current risk is a compromise that still leaves the system exposed. While a patch is a positive step, it does not mitigate the immediate risk. The ethical and regulatory obligation is to ensure the system is secure at the time of deployment. Relying on a future fix is a gamble that could have severe consequences if the vulnerability is exploited before the patch is applied. Professional reasoning. Professionals in systems engineering must adopt a risk-based decision-making process. This involves identifying potential threats, assessing their likelihood and impact, and implementing appropriate controls. When a potential vulnerability is identified, the immediate priority is to understand its nature and severity through independent assessment. If the risk is deemed unacceptable, deployment should be postponed until mitigation strategies are in place. This process requires clear communication with stakeholders, including management and vendors, to explain the rationale for delays and the necessary steps for remediation. Ethical decision-making in engineering is not about avoiding difficult choices, but about making the most responsible choices based on available information and professional standards. Question 13. The audit findings indicate that a new third-party analytics tool intended to optimize production line efficiency has been integrated into the connected factory environment without a formal data processing agreement, DPA, in place. The vendor has provided verbal assurances regarding data security and privacy, but the specific mechanisms for data access, retention, and anonymization remain unclear. The systems engineer is now faced with a decision on how to proceed with the tool's full deployment. Option A. Proceed with full deployment of the analytics tool, relying on the vendor's verbal assurances and focusing on the immediate operational benefits. Option B, continue using the tool in its current state but implement additional internal monitoring to detect any potential data misuse. Option C, halt the deployment and insist on a comprehensive data processing agreement, DPA, that clearly outlines data handling, security, and breach notification protocols, and propose a pilot phase using anonymized data. Option D, request the vendor to provide a generic privacy policy, assuming it covers the necessary data protection requirements for industrial IoT data. The correct answer is A. Proceed with full deployment of the analytics tool, relying on the vendor's verbal assurances and focusing on the immediate operational benefits. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma in the context of IoT-connected factory systems, specifically concerning data privacy and security. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate operational benefits of a new data analytics tool with the potential long-term risks of unauthorized access and misuse of sensitive production data. The systems engineer is caught between the pressure to implement a solution that promises efficiency gains and the responsibility to uphold data protection principles and regulatory compliance. The ambiguity of the vendor's data handling practices and the lack of explicit contractual clauses create a gray area, demanding careful judgment and a proactive approach to risk mitigation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes data security and regulatory compliance by demanding clear contractual assurances and robust technical safeguards before proceeding. This aligns with the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and security by design, which are fundamental to many data protection regulations. By insisting on a data processing agreement, DPA, that clearly defines data ownership, access controls, and breach notification procedures, the systems engineer ensures that the implementation adheres to legal and ethical standards. Furthermore, advocating for a pilot phase with anonymized or pseudonymized data demonstrates a commitment to a risk-based approach, allowing for evaluation of the tool's efficacy without exposing sensitive information prematurely. This proactive stance protects the organization from potential regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of trust from stakeholders. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the tool immediately without further due diligence represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It disregards the potential for data breaches and non-compliance with data protection laws, which could lead to severe penalties. This approach prioritizes expediency over responsibility, failing to adequately assess or mitigate risks associated with sensitive production data. Accepting the vendor's verbal assurances without formal documentation is also professionally unacceptable. Verbal agreements lack legal standing and provide no recourse in case of disputes or breaches. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to implement adequate contractual controls, exposing the organization to undue risk and violating the principle of accountability in data processing. Focusing solely on the potential operational benefits while downplaying the data security concerns is a flawed decision-making process. It indicates a failure to appreciate the interconnectedness of operational efficiency and data protection. Ethical and regulatory compliance are not optional add-ons, but integral components of responsible system engineering, especially when dealing with sensitive data in an industrial setting. Professional reasoning. Professionals in systems engineering must adopt a risk-aware and compliance-centric decision-making framework. This involves 1. Identifying and assessing potential risks, including data security and privacy vulnerabilities. 2. Understanding and adhering to all applicable regulatory requirements and ethical guidelines. 3. Prioritizing the implementation of robust security measures and clear contractual agreements. 4. Employing a phased approach, such as pilot testing with controlled data, to validate solutions before full deployment. 5. Documenting all decisions, risk assessments, and mitigation strategies. 6. Escalating concerns to appropriate stakeholders and legal counsel when ambiguity or significant risks are identified. Question 14. Which approach would be most ethically sound and compliant with best practices for systems engineers when a new IoT sensor network in a connected factory collects operational data that could indirectly reveal individual worker efficiency metrics, even after anonymization? Option A. Halt the deployment of the sensor network until a comprehensive ethical review board can assess the data's potential impact and provide explicit guidance on its use, ensuring all affected parties are informed and consent is obtained. Option B. Collect the data and use it for operational improvements, but proactively develop internal guidelines for data interpretation that strictly prohibit any analysis that could be used to evaluate individual performance. Option C. Proceed with data collection and analysis, relying on the anonymization process to protect privacy and address any issues that arise after deployment. Option D. Implement the sensor network with a focus on immediate operational improvements, assuming that the anonymized data is sufficiently protected and that any perceived privacy concerns are secondary to productivity gains. Correct answer is C. Proceed with data collection and analysis, relying on the anonymization process to protect privacy and address any issues that arise after deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in IoT systems engineering, particularly within a connected factory context. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency and data-driven improvements against the potential for unintended consequences and the ethical implications of data usage. The systems engineer is privy to sensitive operational data that, while anonymized, could still be used to infer individual performance or even identify specific equipment vulnerabilities that might be exploited. The core tension is between leveraging data for legitimate business objectives and upholding principles of data privacy and responsible innovation. Correct approach prioritizes transparency, informed consent, and a robust risk assessment before deploying any system that collects or utilizes sensitive operational data. This aligns with the principles of responsible data stewardship and ethical AI development, which are increasingly codified in regulatory frameworks governing data privacy and cybersecurity. By seeking explicit consent from affected parties, e.g., factory floor personnel, management, and conducting a thorough impact assessment, the engineer demonstrates a commitment to minimizing harm and respecting individual rights. This proactive stance ensures that the deployment of new technologies is not only technically sound, but also ethically defensible and compliant with evolving regulatory expectations for data handling and AI deployment. An incorrect approach that proceeds with data collection and analysis without explicit consent or a comprehensive risk assessment fails to uphold fundamental ethical obligations. This could lead to a breach of trust, potential legal repercussions under data protection laws, and damage to the company's reputation. Another incorrect approach, which involves solely relying on anonymization without considering the potential for re-identification or secondary uses of the data, is also problematic. While anonymization is a crucial step, it is not always foolproof, and the ethical responsibility extends to anticipating how the data might be used or misused, even in its anonymized form. Furthermore, a purely technical solution that ignores the human element and the potential impact on individuals is ethically deficient. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with identifying potential ethical implications and regulatory requirements. This involves understanding the data being collected, its potential uses, and the individuals or systems it might affect. A thorough risk assessment, including privacy impact assessments and security vulnerability analyses, should be conducted. Seeking stakeholder input and obtaining informed consent where appropriate are critical steps. Finally, continuous monitoring and evaluation of the system's performance and its ethical implications are necessary to ensure ongoing compliance and responsible operation. Question 15. The review process indicates that a new machine learning algorithm has been developed to dynamically adjust production line parameters for improved throughput. The engineering team proposes to deploy this algorithm directly into the live connected factory environment to achieve immediate optimization gains. Which of the following actions best represents a responsible and compliant approach to implementing this optimization? Option A. Deploy the algorithm directly to the production line, monitoring its impact on throughput and making real-time adjustments as needed. Option B. Roll out the algorithm across all production lines simultaneously to maximize the potential for immediate optimization benefits. Option C. Integrate the algorithm into a subset of the production line for a limited pilot test with manual oversight and intervention capabilities. Option D. Implement the algorithm in a simulated environment that mirrors the production system to assess its performance and identify potential issues before live deployment. Correct answer is D. Implement the algorithm in a simulated environment that mirrors the production system to assess its performance and identify potential issues before live deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in industrial IoT deployments, balancing the drive for process optimization with the imperative to maintain system integrity and compliance. The challenge lies in the potential for rapid, unverified changes to impact operational stability, data security, and regulatory adherence. Systems engineers must exercise careful judgment to ensure that optimization efforts do not inadvertently introduce vulnerabilities or violate established standards. The correct approach prioritizes a structured, phased implementation of process optimization changes, underpinned by robust testing and validation. This aligns with best professional practices for systems engineering, which emphasize risk management and a systematic approach to change. Specifically, it adheres to principles of change control and configuration management, ensuring that any modifications are documented, assessed for impact, and approved before deployment. This methodical process minimizes the risk of unintended consequences, such as introducing security flaws or disrupting critical operations, thereby upholding the integrity of the connected factory environment. An incorrect approach that bypasses formal testing and validation introduces significant regulatory and ethical risks. For instance, deploying optimization algorithms directly into a live production environment without prior simulation or pilot testing could lead to operational failures that violate safety regulations or data integrity standards. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on immediate cost savings without considering the long-term implications for system resilience and security, could lead to a violation of data protection guidelines or industry-specific compliance mandates. Ethically, such shortcuts demonstrate a disregard for the potential harm to operations, data, and personnel. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment of any proposed optimization. This involves identifying potential impacts on system performance, security, and compliance. Following this, a phased implementation plan should be developed, including clear testing protocols, rollback procedures, and stakeholder communication. Continuous monitoring and evaluation post-implementation are also crucial to ensure sustained optimization benefits and to detect any emergent issues. This systematic process ensures that optimization efforts are both effective and responsible, aligning with both technical best practices and regulatory expectations. Question 16. The analysis reveals that a connected factory's IoT data streams are being used to identify bottlenecks in the production line for process optimization. However, concerns have been raised about the potential for inaccurate insights due to the inherent variability and potential noise in sensor readings. Which of the following approaches best ensures that process optimization efforts are based on reliable data and adhere to professional best practices for systems engineering in an industrial IoT environment? Option A. Directly feed all raw IoT sensor data into advanced machine learning algorithms designed for bottleneck identification, assuming the algorithms can inherently filter out noise and inaccuracies. Option B. Implement a comprehensive data validation and cleansing pipeline before applying any optimization algorithms, ensuring that data anomalies are identified and addressed to produce a reliable dataset for analysis. Option C. Prioritize the rapid deployment of optimization solutions based on initial data trends, with a plan to refine data quality later if significant operational issues arise. Option D. Focus solely on the mathematical outputs of the optimization algorithms, trusting their predictive capabilities without scrutinizing the underlying data generation and processing mechanisms. The correct answer is B. Implement a comprehensive data validation and cleansing pipeline before applying any optimization algorithms, ensuring that data anomalies are identified and addressed to produce a reliable dataset for analysis. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where a systems engineer is tasked with optimizing a connected factory's production line using IoT data. The challenge lies in balancing the drive for efficiency with the imperative to maintain data integrity and comply with relevant regulations. This requires a nuanced understanding of how data is collected, processed, and utilized, ensuring that any optimization strategy does not inadvertently compromise security, privacy, or the accuracy of the operational metrics. The correct approach involves a holistic review of the data pipeline, from sensor deployment to the final analytics dashboard. This includes validating data sources, implementing robust data cleansing and transformation processes, and ensuring that the optimization algorithms are applied to accurate and representative datasets. Adherence to the principles of data governance, as outlined in relevant industrial standards and potentially specific national cybersecurity frameworks, assuming a U.S. jurisdiction for this exam's context, e.g., NIST guidelines, is paramount. This ensures that the optimization efforts are grounded in reliable information and do not lead to erroneous conclusions or operational disruptions. Ethical considerations regarding data usage and potential impact on workforce are also implicitly addressed by a thorough, data-centric approach. An incorrect approach would be to directly apply optimization algorithms to raw, unvalidated IoT data. This is professionally unacceptable because it risks making decisions based on flawed information. For instance, sensor drift or intermittent connectivity could introduce significant noise and bias into the data, leading to suboptimal or even detrimental adjustments to the production process. This could violate implicit ethical obligations to maintain operational stability and could also lead to non-compliance with quality control regulations if the resulting product quality degrades. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of implementation over data quality checks. A rapid optimization is often desirable. Bypassing essential validation steps can have severe consequences. This could lead to a situation where the factory operates under a false sense of efficiency, masking underlying issues that could escalate into production failures or safety concerns. From a regulatory standpoint, this could be seen as negligence, especially if it leads to product defects or breaches of operational safety standards. A third incorrect approach involves focusing solely on the output of the optimization algorithms without understanding the underlying data generation and processing. This black box mentality ignores the critical role of data integrity. If the data feeding the algorithm is compromised, the output will be unreliable, regardless of the algorithm's sophistication. This can lead to a cascade of errors, impacting resource allocation, scheduling, and ultimately, the factory's profitability and reputation. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise due diligence in managing critical operational systems. The professional reasoning process for such a situation should involve a phased approach. First, establish a clear understanding of the data sources and their reliability. Second, implement robust data validation and cleansing protocols. Third, select and apply optimization techniques that are appropriate for the validated data. And finally, continuously monitor the impact of optimizations and the integrity of the data feeding the system. This iterative process, grounded in data quality and regulatory awareness, ensures that process optimization is both effective and responsible. Question 17. The assessment process reveals that a new IoT-enabled module promises significant improvements in production line throughput by dynamically adjusting machine parameters in real time. However, integrating this module requires direct network access to several critical operational technology IoT systems and involves the collection of granular production data. The engineering team is eager to deploy it immediately to demonstrate rapid ROI. Considering the regulatory framework governing industrial IoT deployments, which approach best balances the pursuit of process optimization with the imperative of system security and compliance. Option A. Implement the module with minimal network access, disabling its real-time parameter adjustment capabilities to reduce potential security risks, even if it significantly limits the optimization benefits. Option B. Deploy the module with enhanced network segmentation, but bypass the formal change management and validation processes to expedite the deployment and realize the efficiency gains sooner. Option C. Proceed with immediate integration of the new module, relying on the vendor's security assurances and focusing solely on the performance uplift. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, impact analysis, and a phased pilot deployment of the module in a segregated test environment before full integration, ensuring alignment with existing security policies and data handling regulations. The correct answer is C. Proceed with immediate integration of the new module, relying on the vendor's security assurances and focusing solely on the performance uplift. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in industrial IoT deployments. balancing the drive for immediate process optimization with the imperative to maintain system integrity and regulatory compliance. The pressure to demonstrate quick ROI can lead to overlooking critical security and data governance aspects. The interconnected nature of IoT devices in a factory setting means that a seemingly minor optimization can have cascading effects on security posture, data privacy, and operational stability, all of which are subject to specific regulatory frameworks. The challenge lies in making a decision that is not only technically sound for optimization, but also ethically and legally defensible within the defined regulatory landscape. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased implementation with robust testing and validation, ensuring that any process optimization is integrated in a manner that upholds the established security protocols and data handling policies. This aligns with the principles of secure by design and privacy by design, which are increasingly embedded in regulatory frameworks governing industrial systems and data. By conducting a thorough risk assessment, impact analysis, and pilot testing, the system engineer ensures that the optimization does not introduce vulnerabilities or compromise data integrity, thereby adhering to the spirit and letter of relevant regulations concerning operational technology security and data protection. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of unintended consequences and ensures that the optimization contributes to overall system resilience and compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the optimization directly without prior testing or risk assessment represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses established change management procedures and ignores potential security vulnerabilities that could be introduced, such as unauthorized access points or data exfiltration risks. This approach violates the principle of due diligence in system engineering and could lead to non-compliance with data protection regulations if sensitive operational data is mishandled. Deploying the optimization solely based on vendor claims without independent verification is another failure. It demonstrates a lack of critical evaluation and reliance on external assurances without due diligence. This can lead to the adoption of solutions that do not meet the specific security or performance requirements of the connected factory, potentially exposing the system to risks that are not adequately mitigated, thus contravening regulatory expectations for system robustness and security. Focusing exclusively on the potential efficiency gains without considering the security implications is a direct contravention of modern industrial cybersecurity regulations. It prioritizes a single metric, efficiency, over the holistic security and integrity of the connected factory, which is a fundamental requirement for operational continuity and data protection. This narrow focus can lead to the introduction of significant security gaps, making the system vulnerable to cyber threats and potentially leading to breaches that have severe legal and financial repercussions. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this domain must adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the connected factory environment, e.g., data privacy, cybersecurity standards for industrial control systems. 2. Conducting a comprehensive assessment of the proposed optimization, including its technical feasibility, potential impact on system performance, and critically, its security and data governance implications. 3. Prioritizing a phased approach that includes rigorous testing, validation, and pilot deployment in a controlled environment. 4. Documenting all decisions, risk assessments, and mitigation strategies. 5. Seeking stakeholder buy-in and ensuring transparency throughout the process. This structured approach ensures that optimizations are implemented responsibly, minimizing risks and maximizing compliance. Question 18. Benchmark analysis indicates that a connected factory's production line is experiencing a consistent bottleneck impacting overall throughput. As the systems engineer responsible for process optimization, which of the following approaches best aligns with ensuring both improved efficiency and adherence to operational integrity and security standards? Option A. Implement a series of rapid, iterative changes to the control logic of the bottleneck machinery, relying on real-time operator feedback to gauge success. Option B. Focus solely on reducing the energy consumption of the machinery on the bottleneck line, as this is a key cost-saving initiative, even if it doesn't directly address the throughput issue. Option C. Prioritize implementing the optimization strategy that promises the most significant increase in production speed, based on vendor claims without extensive pre-implementation testing. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive analysis of the bottleneck, evaluating the impact of potential solutions on all critical system parameters, including data integrity, security vulnerabilities, and compliance with established operational protocols, before piloting the most promising, risk-assessed solution. The correct answer is C. Prioritize implementing the optimization strategy that promises the most significant increase in production speed based on vendor claims, without extensive pre-implementation testing. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in industrial IoT deployments, balancing the drive for process optimization with the imperative to maintain system integrity and compliance. The challenge lies in identifying and implementing improvements that yield tangible benefits without introducing unforeseen risks or violating established operational parameters and regulatory mandates. The systems engineer must navigate the complexities of interconnected systems, data flows, and potential impacts on production, safety, and security. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven evaluation of proposed changes, prioritizing those with the highest potential for measurable improvement in efficiency or output, while rigorously assessing their impact on system stability, security, and compliance with relevant industry standards and any applicable regulations. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that optimization efforts are not only effective, but also responsible and sustainable. It demonstrates a commitment to a holistic view of system performance, encompassing not just speed or throughput, but also reliability, security, and adherence to operational guidelines. This methodical approach minimizes disruption and risk, fostering trust and ensuring long-term operational success. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing changes based solely on anecdotal evidence or the perceived urgency of a single metric, without a comprehensive impact assessment, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks introducing unintended consequences, such as increased system vulnerability, data integrity issues, or non-compliance with operational protocols. It bypasses the due diligence required to ensure that optimizations do not compromise safety, security, or the integrity of the production process, which could lead to regulatory penalties or operational failures. Adopting a move fast and break things mentality, even in the context of optimization, is professionally unacceptable. This disregard for systematic evaluation and risk assessment can lead to critical system failures, data breaches, or violations of operational standards. Ethically, it fails to uphold the responsibility to maintain a secure and reliable operational environment. Focusing exclusively on cost reduction without considering the impact on process efficiency, system reliability, or security is also a flawed approach. While cost is a factor, optimization should aim for a balanced improvement across multiple critical performance indicators. Neglecting other vital aspects can lead to short-term gains at the expense of long-term operational health and compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defining the objectives of process optimization. This involves identifying key performance indicators, KPI, that are relevant to the specific factory environment and its operational goals. Next, a thorough assessment of current system performance and potential bottlenecks should be conducted, utilizing available data and diagnostic tools. Proposed optimization strategies should then be evaluated against these KPIs and their potential impact on system stability, security, and compliance. A phased implementation approach, coupled with continuous monitoring and validation, is crucial. This iterative process allows for adjustments and ensures that optimizations are effective and sustainable, while adhering to all relevant regulatory frameworks and ethical considerations. Question 19. During the evaluation of a new IoT connected factory initiative aimed at optimizing production line efficiency through advanced data analytics, what is the most prudent approach to data handling and processing to ensure both operational improvements and adherence to data security and intellectual property protection guidelines? Option A. Establish a centralized cloud data lake storing all raw sensor data, granting broad access to data scientists for exploratory analysis. Option B. Anonymize and aggregate sensor data at the edge before transmitting it to the cloud for analysis, implementing granular access controls for cloud-based data scientists. Option C. Develop custom analytics algorithms that require direct, unfiltered access to individual machine-level data streams, bypassing standard API gateways. Option D. Transmit all raw, unencrypted sensor data directly to the cloud for immediate, comprehensive analysis by all authorized personnel. The correct answer is B. Anonymize and aggregate sensor data at the edge before transmitting it to the cloud for analysis, implementing granular access controls for cloud-based data scientists. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in IoT-connected factories, balancing the drive for process optimization through data analytics with the imperative to protect sensitive intellectual property and operational data. The systems engineer must navigate the complexities of data sharing, access control, and the potential for unauthorized disclosure or misuse, all within the context of regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in implementing effective optimization strategies without compromising security or violating data governance policies. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of data analytics for process optimization, prioritizing data, anonymization, and aggregation at the edge before transmitting it to the cloud. This aligns with best practices for data security and privacy in industrial IoT environments. By anonymizing and aggregating data locally, sensitive operational details and proprietary algorithms are shielded from direct exposure during transit and in the cloud. This strategy minimizes the attack surface and reduces the risk of data breaches or intellectual property theft. Furthermore, it adheres to the principle of least privilege, ensuring that only necessary processed data is shared, thereby enhancing overall system security and compliance with data protection guidelines that emphasize minimizing data exposure. Incorrect approaches analysis. Transmitting raw, unencrypted sensor data directly to the cloud for analysis without any edge processing or anonymization is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach exposes highly sensitive operational parameters, potentially including proprietary manufacturing processes and machine states, to a much wider attack surface. If the cloud infrastructure is compromised, this raw data could be exfiltrated, leading to intellectual property theft and competitive disadvantage. It also likely violates data protection regulations that mandate measures to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive information. Implementing a centralized data lake in the cloud that stores all raw sensor data from every machine, with access granted broadly to data scientists for immediate analysis, also presents substantial risks. It facilitates rapid analysis. It creates a single point of failure and a massive target for attackers. The lack of granular access controls and the broad dissemination of raw data increase the likelihood of accidental or malicious data leakage. This approach fails to implement robust security measures and data segregation, which are often required by industry-specific regulations and ethical guidelines for handling sensitive industrial data. Developing custom analytics algorithms that require direct access to individual machine-level data streams without implementing secure APIs or data masking techniques is another problematic approach. This method bypasses established security protocols and creates direct vulnerabilities. If the custom algorithms or the systems running them are compromised, attackers could gain direct access to the most granular and sensitive operational data, leading to severe security breaches and potential disruption of operations. This disregards the need for secure data interfaces and robust authentication mechanisms. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to data management and process optimization in IoT-connected factories. This involves a thorough assessment of data sensitivity, potential threats, and regulatory requirements. The decision-making process should prioritize security by design, implementing layered security measures from the edge to the cloud. This includes data anonymization, encryption, access control, and regular security audits. Professionals must also stay abreast of relevant industry standards and regulations pertaining to data protection and intellectual property. When evaluating new technologies or processes, a critical step is to assess their impact on data security and compliance, ensuring that optimization goals do not come at the expense of fundamental security principles. Question 20. Compliance review shows that a new IoT sensor network is ready for deployment in a critical manufacturing process. The project team is eager to deploy quickly to capture market advantage. Which approach best aligns with U.S. regulatory expectations and professional engineering ethics for ensuring the security of this connected factory system? Option A. Prioritize immediate deployment of the sensor network to gain market advantage, with a plan to address any identified security vulnerabilities through post-deployment patching. Option B. Implement the sensor network with basic security features, assuming that the inherent security of the chosen IoT hardware will suffice for initial operations. Option C. Conduct a thorough security risk assessment and implement validated security controls for the sensor network before full deployment, with a plan for ongoing monitoring and updates. Option D. Deploy the sensor network and rely entirely on the organization's central IT security team to monitor for and mitigate any security risks. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough security risk assessment and implement validated security controls for the sensor network before full deployment, with a plan for ongoing monitoring and updates. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid innovation in IoT technologies and the need for robust, compliant security measures. The systems engineer must balance the desire to deploy new features quickly to gain a competitive advantage with the absolute priority of ensuring that these deployments do not introduce vulnerabilities that could be exploited, leading to data breaches, operational disruptions, or safety hazards. The specific jurisdiction for this exam is the United States, and therefore, all regulatory considerations must align with U.S. federal and relevant state laws and guidelines pertaining to cybersecurity and data protection in industrial environments. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic risk-based security validation process before deployment. This aligns with the principles of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, which emphasizes identifying, protecting, detecting, responding, and recovering from cyber threats. Specifically, it adheres to the protect function by ensuring that security controls are implemented and validated. Furthermore, it reflects the spirit of regulations like the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2014, which promotes the adoption of cybersecurity best practices and standards. Ethically, it upholds the engineer's responsibility to ensure the safety and security of the systems they design and deploy, protecting both the organization and its stakeholders. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed of deployment without adequate security validation fails to meet the requirements of the NIST CSF's identify and protect functions. It risks introducing vulnerabilities that could lead to breaches, violating data protection principles enshrined in regulations like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, if personal data is involved, or industry-specific regulations if applicable. Ethically, this approach demonstrates negligence and a disregard for the potential harm to users and the organization. Another incorrect approach that relies on post-deployment patching as the primary security strategy is also professionally unacceptable. Patching is a critical component of cybersecurity. It is a reactive measure. Relying on it as the main defense mechanism ignores the proactive security requirements of the NIST CSF and the fundamental principle of building security into the system from the outset. This can lead to prolonged periods of vulnerability, increasing the likelihood of a successful attack and potential non-compliance with security mandates. A third incorrect approach that delegates all security responsibility to a separate IT security team without active systems engineering involvement is flawed. While collaboration is essential, the systems engineer is directly responsible for the design and integration of the IoT components. A lack of direct involvement in security validation by the systems engineer means potential design-level vulnerabilities might be overlooked, as the IT security team may not have the same deep understanding of the operational technology context and its specific risks. This fragmented approach hinders comprehensive risk assessment and mitigation, potentially violating the principle of shared responsibility for cybersecurity. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This includes identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to the IoT connected factory environment, assessing the likelihood and impact of these threats, and then implementing appropriate security controls. The NIST CSF provides a robust framework for this. Engineers should advocate for security to be an integral part of the design and development lifecycle, not an afterthought. This involves continuous collaboration with security teams, thorough testing and validation before deployment, and a commitment to ongoing monitoring and improvement.